You're listening to My Spouse Has Dementia, a podcast that uses personal stories, occasional interviews, and simple rituals to support dementia caregiving spouses. I'm Zita Christian, writer, life cycle celebrant, widow. My husband had Alzheimer's. In my kitchen, there's a wooden plaque that says, "Home is where your story begins." I believe that. I believe that's why we're compelled to share the stories of what we've been through. Maybe that's to celebrate or inform or educate or maybe even to warn somebody. So as you listen to this interview, please give some thought to your own story and consider whether or not it's a story you want to tell now or maybe later, and think about the options that you have. There are lots of them. You can start writing your own Substack, like the one titled Searching for the Words by Patricia Patty. She's caring for a spouse with dementia. We met because she sent me an email, and you can do the same. Just simply write to Zita, that's Z as in zebra, Zita, at ritualrecipes.net. I'd love to hear from you. My guest is DeMoss Compton. She is a professional in the caregiving space. She's also a writer. Perhaps it's the blending of those two worlds that enables her to see the impact of making small changes. I want you to meet her because I think she can help us. Debbie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Zita. I'm happy to be here.
Good. I want to talk first because I think it's one of the most important questions when sharing information with those people who are on that caregiving journey, and that's the people who listen to my podcast, that I want to talk about the fact that you yourself have had the lived experience of being a caregiver. So could you tell me a little about your lived experience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't set out to be a caregiver, as most people can identify with. I was in business. I had progressed up through the ranks, was traveling coast to coast, loving life. My plan was to retire with the company, and I had been there for 15 years. But my mother actually was the first one to be diagnosed, and she had vascular dementia. But she was really high functioning, and so I had things lined out, and I did not know enough about the disease to realize that was not going to last. I thought I put my plan in place, everything's working, we're golden. And several years later, my dad developed Parkinson's, and he required a lot more care quickly. He started really going downhill fast. And so I discovered I could not do both. I couldn't travel almost every week and still take good care of my parents. So I became a full-time caregiver for mom and dad and took them to all their appointments, did all the stuff. My dad passed away after about 8 years with Parkinson's, and we were able to keep him in his home until he passed, which was what he wanted to do. So that was a blessing in itself. And as dad was passing, actually, when he was starting the really steep decline, that's when my mother in law developed Alzheimer's. And so it's like, oh my goodness, this is crazy. She has 5 children, but apparently they had things to do. And I say that jokingly because I think a lot of people can relate to that, because you hear things like, well, you're so good at it. Well, you do such a good job that you would be the one that makes perfect sense for you. Yeah, anything that gets other people out of it and gets you on the hook is what it seems to be. But I loved her and she loved me, and so I became her caregiver as well. She had it for about 7.5 years with the Alzheimer's struggle, and then she passed away. And so then it was quite a few years later that my mother finally passed away. She was the first diagnosed and the last one to pass away. Her journey was 21 years with vascular dementia. So I got my certifications after two of my loved ones passed away, after dad and my mother-in-law passed away. That's when I had a little bit of time and became a certified caregiving consultant and a certified caregiver advocate, and learned more things that would have been helpful had I known in the midst of the journey. But of course, I did not. And so that's when it became my mission to help other caregivers to teach them things that they need to know that they're not even aware. You don't even know what questions to ask. You're just struggling, trying to survive the day to day. And it's so isolating. You can feel like you're the only one on this journey, and you're not. There are so many caregivers out there today, just thousands. And every day there are new caregivers on the scene because mainly because the biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's is old age, and the baby boomers are all aging. So that requires more caregivers. So I have a very big job in helping, and I support in any way that I can and try to help caregivers learn. I can really cut the learning curve down for them. They don't have to struggle like I did.
I'm happy to hear you say that. And I'm particularly happy to hear you talk about the certifications that you received. And I was noticing on the website, thepurplevine.com, that you are, as you mentioned, certified caregiving consultant, certified caregiving advocate, and you're also a community educator with Alzheimer's Association. And my reason for mentioning those is the question that arises for me, thinking about my listeners. Why should your having those certifications be important to caregivers who might be listening to this podcast or who are considering working with you?
Because it helps me, I know the disease from both sides, from being a caregiver and from getting the training and learning so many. I learned so much while going through my training. I really did things that would have made my life so much easier, but I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know procedures that you could do to make life easier. And now I learned a lot of things going through the process because I'm a naturally creative person. My husband and I both are. And so we created things to make life safer and easier because his mother was a huge wanderer. And so she would just get out of the house and go down the street and all times of the night and all kinds of things. So we had to come up with ways to make life safer for her because the things on the market didn't work. They said, put a latch up high on the door. That works for a lot of people, but not for her. She pushed a chair over to the door and climbed up on the chair and undid the latch. So
Oh,
now you've got an extra problem here. She could fall off that chair and break a hip. So, so we had to just really come up with creative ways to solve the issues because you want to maintain the dignity for the person and you don't want to always be saying no. We try to never say no. We try to offer alternatives and different suggestions, and distraction is a wonderful tool for caregivers.
well, what did you do in that scenario? Because I had a similar scenario. I wound up putting sleigh bells on the door. I wound up putting little chimes up on the top,
Mhm.
just something so that I would be sure to hear because my husband loved to walk. He would go outside as often as he could. So what did you wind up doing?
Well, we did the things that you mentioned as well. The thing that was a problem is that she would do it in the middle of the night, and we had the chimes installed so that anytime an exterior door opened, it would ding and wake us up and stuff. But I wanted to go further. I wanted to stop that door from opening up. And so it turned out to be a really simple tool. You know, those door stops that they have at schools and big places that are metal and they're attached to the bottom of the door and it has a rubber stop on it, and you flip it down and it holds the door open at school
Yep.
or wherever you're at, big buildings. We mounted that on the inside of our front door. That way you can flip it down with your foot and flip that door stop down, and that door is not going to open. It will not open. And she didn't look down, she didn't see it. She never noticed it. And it worked fantastically.
That's really smart. And then obviously you would know what to do if there was some kind of an emergency and you had to exit the
Yes,
building right away.
right. Yeah, you don't have to remember a code. You don't have to do anything. You can reach down and lift it up. You can flip it up with your foot, and then the door is fully operational. But it
And you
keeps her
were
safe.
you were able to install it, if that's even the right word, by yourselves. This
Mhm.
wasn't something where you need some kind of an expert.
No, no, just a screwdriver. And just put some little screws in, screwed it on the bottom of the door, and you're good to go.
That's excellent. You know, that ties right into something I want to talk about. I mentioned earlier that the name of your website is thepurplevine.com, which I love that name and I love the graphic that you have on your website. I
Thank you.
noticed that Your website is a resource that is filled with so much helpful information. I know that there are a lot of people who are involved in the world of advocating for caregivers and of providing consulting and services. And I'm grateful that that is all there now because it wasn't that way from the beginning at all. What I
Right.
find though is a lot of the information is on one hand, I might say repetitive, but that sounds has a negative connotation to it. The gift of that is a caregiver who is in this situation of, a loved one's gotten the diagnosis and where do I start? Where do I go for resources? There are a lot of people who can offer that information. What I found in addition to that information that I've seen a lot of places, you have things that I have not seen. And that's one of the key reasons I wanted to talk with you because your information is everyday, helpful, concrete, put it into
Mhm.
action now. And there were a couple of them I wanted to talk with you
Yes.
about specifically. First one, you talked about developing habits that can
Mhm.
prevent caregiver burnout. And you were getting into the I should versus I did. Elaborate on all that for me.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I like to say we should all over ourselves sometimes.
Yes, for sure.
Because you lay down in bed at night, you're completely exhausted, and you start reviewing the day and you think, oh, I should have said this. I should have done that. I shouldn't have done that. I can't believe I snapped at mom. I was so tired. Of course you were. It's okay. You're human. We often compare ourselves to someone who's working a shift at a care facility. They go and work their shift and then they go home. They have time off. They have peace and quiet. They can do whatever they want to do. When you have a loved one living with you, there is no you time. There's no downtime. You're constantly on edge. And so I help caregivers find ways to reduce that stress and find ways to have time for themselves because it's possible. Even though you're a solo caregiver, even if you have no siblings, you have no one who will help, that's fine. There are still ways you can get help. And I know because I've lived it, because I've done it. And you touched on something with that too. You hit it exactly. I say I'm not a fluff person. I don't deal with the, get your mindset right, think positive thoughts and everything will be fine. No, I have lived there. You can think positive thoughts all day long. You're still dealing with throw up and all sorts of other things, that are not fun. Regardless of your mindset. Now, mindset is important. And so you do need to have faith and hope that you're going to get through and the knowledge that you will get through it. Those things are very important, but I deal with, as you said, concrete things. You can read a blog post and it will tell you, try this, try that. And for all different topics, whether it's, wandering hallucinations, getting them to eat, finding time to rest, whatever it is, all the different topics. That's the style that I work in because caregivers have a very limited amount of time. And I know that, and I don't want to waste it. And I know how frustrating it was for me when I would make time to listen to this podcast that promised to teach me all these things. And then all they did was just talk about themselves all the time or their journey continually. And it didn't help me at all. And that's frustrating and upsetting. So I never want to be that person. I absolutely have stories, tons of stories. I mean, most people don't take one little lady with dementia and the other little lady with Alzheimer's to go get their hair cut or go to the doctor or, go to the eye doctor appointment, but I did all those things. And hilarious things happened. And that's where you have to realize too, I say they're hilarious. In the moment, they were not hilarious. In the moment, it was not funny at all. It was exceedingly stressful. But the way to make caregiving more sustainable is to learn to let go of perfectionism and learn to laugh. And so I would back up and say, what if this was someone else? What if I was watching this on YouTube? This would really be funny. This would be hilarious that, she gets one person fully dressed and leaves her combing her hair in the bathroom, goes into the other room, gets the other little lady fully dressed, comes out, and number one has already changed into her pajamas. and you got to start all over again. But that was my fault because I left the pajamas in the room with her. She has dementia. She sees the pajamas, she looks down and thinks, I guess it's time to put pajamas on. So she puts her pajamas back on. And so you have to laugh, and then you figure out a way to solve it, which is I took both of them into the living room and made them sit on the couch while I got them both fully dressed and got their shoes on and everything so that we could go out the door, because everything I kept fixing on one, the other one would mess up.
It's hard enough imagining going through all of that with one person, but with two, I don't know, you need a medal. You should have a medal for that. Tell me a little bit more specifically, though, about your concept of I should versus I did, because that ties into something that I do in my support group. But I wanted you to talk about where you're coming from first.
Everybody's doing the best they can, first off. You are a caregiver, so you are a caring, giving person. A selfish person will never be a caregiver. You are a giving person because you are giving up your time, efforts, energy, everything to support this other person. So, first off, you need to have some great self esteem about that. You're doing a wonderful thing. Then the shoulds are when you made a mistake, you messed up. Like I did, like I just told you about in that example with where my mom, I got her fully dressed and left her in the bathroom, just combing her hair, thinking we're good. What I should have done was remove the other clothes from the bathroom, and then she wouldn't have seen them, and then she would not have changed back into her pajamas. That's not something to beat myself up over, though. That's something to laugh about and go, well, lesson learned. Because you know what? I did learn the lesson and I didn't do that anymore. That's what it's about. Maybe you lost your temper with your loved one. Step back and look at why. Oh, have you not had enough rest for weeks? You've been up night after night. You're exhausted. You need rest and you need that time, because when sometimes we wear burnout like a badge of honor. It's like, oh yeah, I'm giving everything to them. I can't do anything for myself. And we're kind of a little proud of what we're doing and what we're giving up. And we need to stop that. My brother really hit me with that one because he came over one day and he said, what can I do to help? And I said, oh, nothing, I'm fine. Okay, that was a lie. I was not fine. I definitely needed help, but I didn't want to impose on him. And I didn't want to make it harder for him. Any of this sound familiar? These are things we tell ourselves, right? And again, I know because I've done it, because I've been there. My brother looked at me and he said, how do you feel when you help someone out? And I said, well, good. It makes me feel good. He said, right. It blesses you to help someone else, doesn't it? And I said, yes, it does. And he said, don't steal my blessing.
Good point.
Oh, man. Total reframe. Don't steal their blessing. They want to help you. Let them help you. And if I could, you mind if I give an example of how somebody who is a solo caregiver and is saying, I don't have anybody to help? Can I tell you one
Please,
what I did? Yeah,
please.
here's what I did. Get creative. I go to church. I know there are some older people at church that are still cognitively aware, but they don't drive anymore. So I called up one of the little old ladies and I said, hey, would you mind coming over and watching a movie with my mom and my mother-in-law? And she said, well, I would love to, but I don't drive anymore. And I said, no problem. We will come get you. So I loaded up my mom and my mother in law. I drove over, picked up this sweet little lady, and brought her to my house, sat the three of them down on the couch, gave them each a glass of iced tea, turned on a Doris Day movie, and I've got an hour and a half all to myself. They're not alone. If anything should happen, I'm there. I am available, but I don't have to monitor them. They had a new friend. They were thrilled to have their friend. They had the greatest time. And you know what? It was wonderful for that little lady, too, because she was useful. She was needed again. I thanked her over and over because it was a huge blessing to me, but it also turned out to be a huge blessing to her. So just get creative.
That's a beautiful story. And I want to also point out that you had to arrange for both women in your care to get into the car and drive because it wasn't safe to leave them at home alone. So it's not a simple matter of going over and to pick up the other woman to bring her back over and watch the movie. There was a whole extra step. And I think a
Right.
lot of times people who are new to the world of caregiving, and maybe because it's their first experience caregiving, but it also could be that they are a friend or a neighbor or a family member who now is like in town or something, and now they're able to, they come over and say, what can I do to help? They don't realize you can't do
Mm-hmm.
things the old way that you always did it.
Mm-hmm.
I also want to point out, though, I had a little different take on the phrase of I did. And I realize now after listening to you, I was coming from a different perspective.
Oh.
But just so I put it out there, we have a very small support group now. It's dwindled a lot over the years. We meet twice a month. I always start out by asking everyone, tell me what you did over the past 2 weeks that was an expression of your personal power. And that could be
Oh.
asking for a second opinion. It could be asking for somebody to come over to help do something. It could be looking for, an experimental drug program. It could be refusing some kind of a medication. It could be so many different things. It could be saying, I know that you want us to come over for an in-person visit. This happened to one of the women a couple of winters ago, and it was a 2-hour drive. And it
Oh.
was for a very simple, I need to watch him walk. I need to assess his gait.
Mm.
And she said, no, it is,
Good for
they're
her.
both in their 80s. And she said, no,
Mm.
we're not driving in this wintry weather. We're in Connecticut and we're not driving for that. I'll set up the computer and you can watch him. And
Mm-hmm.
then quite the reverse. There was one time where it was another couple who was, well, we'll do a televisit. And she said, no, he needs to see a doctor in person. Somebody needs to look at this particular thing that was going on with him. But it's
Mm-hmm.
that pushing back. It's that asking for more
Yes.
information. It's that refusing to be
That's the advocate
dismissed.
part.
Yeah, it's hard.
It
But
is.
that idea of being able afterwards to say, I did this.
Mm-hmm. I love
It,
it. I love it because that is so important.
yeah.
And I hear people telling me, well, I'm not a controversial person. You need to reframe the thought on that because you want your loved one to have the best care. And if you want them to have the best care, sometimes you have to fight for it. You have to make them listen to you. I experienced that as well with my mother because most people, when they take iron, have, these particular side effects. My mom has the exact opposite.
Oh.
I know that. And I told them, and they did not listen. And so I'm like, you got to deal with it now. This is horrible. It was a very much a mess, let's say. And so you have to make yourself be heard because there's averages, yes, but we're all individuals and we react to medications differently. And as caregivers, you have to record and watch for those interactions. You are the eyes and ears that help the doctor. And so when you notice that they have this really wild behavior 30 minutes after taking this medication, note it down, write it down, and then call the doctor and tell them, we're not taking this medicine anymore because this is what it's causing. My
Hmm.
mother in law was given a medication that was supposed to make her sleep through the night. It made her, it was like she was on speed. She couldn't be still. She couldn't sit still. She couldn't stop moving. She was just moving nonstop all night long. And he said, I called the doctor and he said, well, I didn't think it was the medication. I think it was something else. Try it again. So we tried it again. Oh, and here we go again. Same thing, just completely exhausting. So I had to just say, we are not doing this. It is the medication. If you have something completely different, we'll try it. If not, forget it. We're not doing it.
I had a similar experience with my husband. The side effect was horrific, violent nightmares.
Oh,
And I slept in the guest room for 3 nights with the door locked until I got the doctor to really, really examine this, look at the medication that he was
mm-hmm,
taking. And I said, he is not taking that anymore. And
mm-hmm.
the
Right.
doctor said, let's try it. Instead of taking it at night, take it in the morning, which was contrary to what the normal procedure was, but it worked for him. We got the good
Oh,
effect of the medicine, but he just responded to things differently. And I wanted to point
mm-hmm,
out back when you were talking something earlier about iron, and just being clear, neither of us is a doctor. And this is not
Correct.
medical advice. I mean, all those kind of
Correct.
disclaimers. But from just, I mean, at my age, I've lived long enough to know that when you take a lot of iron, whether it's in supplements or you're, eating a lot of beets, which I love, but
Mhm.
there's a side effect often it binds the bowels. And
Yes.
so if you're taking something that's having an opposite effect, that's going to cause an opposite problem for somebody. And
Yes.
then that brings on its own issues too of dehydration and stress
Hmm.
and so many things. It all comes back to that whole thing of recognizing and owning that we do have some kind of a personal agency. And the more we can
Yes.
recognize that, I think the better off we deal with the caregiving experience because it feels so much like there's nothing we can do. And when we recognize there are things we can do, even if they're tiny, at least it's
Mhm.
something.
I think you can have a lot more control than what you realize. And I went through that with my brother. My brother had a heart attack, and my sister in law, who's a wonderful person, but her whole mentality is whatever the doctors want to do. I just completely trust the doctors. That's not me because I have seen what has happened. And doctors are wonderful people. It's not against doctors, I'm not against medication, but they don't know your person like you do. And asking questions is a good thing because they can make mistakes as well. And they may give a medication because they've forgotten that your loved one is on a different medication, especially if it was a different doctor that put them on this other medication. And then the two meds are fighting each other, and suddenly they're having these horrible side effects that are caused by the medication. So I really encourage people to step up, stand up, fight for your loved one. You have to, and make sure that you're heard so that you can get the best care, the quality care.
And in a situation like that, let me point out that if there's a caregiver who's in that kind of situation, multiple doctors involved, and you're questioning whether or not this is a good thing taking these different medications, go talk to your pharmacist. Talk
Yes,
to a
pharmacists are great.
pharmacist because
Yes.
they specialize in the contraindications of medicine. I want to jump
Hmm.
to a different topic, Debbie.
Okay.
One of the things on your website that I really want to explore, you were talking about a boundary script and about how important it is for the caregiver to create and practice a boundary script. I want you to give me some examples of that and talk to me about why that's so helpful.
Boundaries are very important. And sometimes it's really hard for us to do. But as you mentioned earlier, someone who's not a caregiver doesn't understand all that you go through just to take someone somewhere. That's why, like, I do Zoom consultations for caregivers because I know how hard it is to get your loved one out and go somewhere strange where they're not comfortable, and then you're on edge and you're watching them all the time. So you can't focus on what it is that you need to ask me so that I can help you. So I do the Zoom talks, and that way you can schedule it if your loved one normally takes a nap at a certain time of the day or they watch a movie or whatever, because that is respecting your time and that is getting the most out of your time. Boundaries to people who have never been a caregiver often don't understand what you're going through, because what you're going through, particularly if you're caring for someone with a form of dementia, it's not rational. It doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
They don't understand that. And they will say things like, we'll just post a step by step. My sister in law did this. She's trying, when my mother in law was still living with her daughter. My sister in law called me and she was so frustrated because her mom couldn't remember how to do the laundry anymore. And so she made a step by step list and posted it on the washing machine. And her mother still couldn't do it. Right. She has Alzheimer's. Of course she can't. She can no longer sequence. She can't follow those steps anymore. But my sister in law couldn't understand that, couldn't get that through her head. But here's the challenge: when they get any form of dementia, two sections of the brain are dying, actively dying. So they're not giving you a problem, they're having a problem. They're having a very hard time. They're not trying to give you a bad time. And that's something that we need to understand. And so sometimes as a caregiver, you have to set the boundary and say, look, especially if you're the primary caregiver and somebody comes in and they're telling you what you should and shouldn't do and all this kind of stuff. I have been known to politely say, would you like her to live with you so that you can handle that and handle that the way you'd like to see fit? That's a really fast way to shut them down because they don't want any part of that. They just want to tell you what to do. And so,
And I know from being in the position of caregiving that I know people want to be helpful, but the
yes.
advice they're offering when they don't understand the power to learn is gone. It's not a matter of, oh,
Yes.
well, I'll say it slower or I'll speak louder. It's like you don't get it. The power to learn has gone. And the
Mhm.
challenge for the caregiver is I don't have the patience to explain that to
Right.
you. It's like,
Right.
so that
Right.
boundary script of just some simple thing of saying, thank you for your advice.
Mhm.
That's not the path we're taking, period.
Right.
Or you phrase it
Right.
however you want, but you need a script as the
You
caregiver.
do.
So you're
You
not
do. And
reinventing yourself all the time, too.
yes, exactly. And I remember the post you're talking about, and it's a good one that people can print out and keep with you so that you have, like you said, you got so much on your plate, you've got so many, your mind's running in so many different directions, and stress compounds it. Stress makes it harder for you to be creative and to remember things. So if you've got it pre-programmed or even hanging on your refrigerator, if they call you and say stuff, you can walk over to the fridge and go down the list and go, thank you for that. I appreciate your input, but we're going to do it this way. I'm handling it this way, or this is what I have decided to do. I had a person think that I was being very mean to their mother because I took her perfume away. I wasn't being mean to her. She had tried to drink it 2 days before. You can't drink perfume. This, you know. And so I took it away. And again, when you bring it full circle to, would you like to come over and help with this? How about if you come over a couple of days a week and help out with them, and then you can try what you're suggesting and see how that works.
Yeah.
Because if you offer to let them step in and try it, I've never seen them take you up on it yet.
No, of
I have
course not.
never. No.
One thing I want to add based on what you just said, I typed out the number for poison control. I tapped it out in like an
Mhm.
18-point type and cut
Mhm.
out the piece of paper and I taped it to the refrigerator.
Mhm.
I had to call poison control twice with my husband. He ate a candle, at a candle on the kitchen
Mhm.
table, and he ate it. And
Mhm.
it was colored and scented, and I had no idea if this was going to be a
Yeah.
problem. Turned out it wasn't. They
Yeah.
said he might have a stomach ache and might have
Mhm.
a bowel issue, but there was nothing in it that was harmful in
But
terms of poison. That's another thing to think about.
that's smart that you did that though, because that's a very important thing. And I did the same thing. I had poison control listed on the side of my refrigerator, and I had to call several times because of things as they get worse, then more things become dangerous that were never dangerous before. My mother-in-law put Fixodent on her lips like lipstick because she thought it was lipstick.
Oh,
Fortunately, I caught her fast enough to wash it off before her mouth was sealed shut. But you just don't know what they're going to do.
oh wow.
Hmm. She drank Germex once too. It's a hand sanitizer that's in a pump bottle, and it's a hand sanitizer. She was pumping it into her hand and then licking it off her hand. And so I was terrified. I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know, because it kills germs. It's got all these,
Chemicals
chemicals in
and
it,
yeah.
everything, loads of stuff. And it messed her up for a while, but thankfully, nothing that was poisonous for her.
One more thing from your website. You mentioned how important it is schedule, to schedule weekly support. And I wondered if
Mm.
you could give me an example and why that whole idea of scheduling support, like not waiting until there's a crisis, I need help, you call a friend, but scheduling
Mhm.
support. Why is that helpful when when you're facing
Because
these challenges?
if you don't schedule it, it's not going to happen. You'll put it off. Time will go by. You'll be laying in bed and thinking, oh, I should have called and asked for support. No, schedule it. And then people can plan also. And you can schedule things like I earlier when I was talking about come over and watch a movie. Sit down and watch a movie with them. Take dad out to lunch. That gives you a great lunch break when they do something like this. And you need those little breaks as a caregiver. In order to make caregiving sustainable, you have to take care of yourself also. And, I feel like a hypocrite saying that because I went 2 years without a doctor's appointment. And then my doctor called me and said, I'm not going to renew your medication if you don't come in. And I was like, okay, you know. So you don't want to do that. And you don't want to wait until you get to the end of your rope. You can make the journey much better for you and your loved one if you schedule a little bit of time for yourself. Whatever it is, whatever makes you happy. Schedule a time to go get your hair done, to get your nails done. Have someone else, have family come and stay with them or pick them up, take them to a movie, take the whatever it is. Even when mom wasn't walking really well, she was walking super, super slow. And so it was hard to take her anywhere because she just keeps stopping and, you nearly get hit by a car trying to get across the road. It was all the thing. But I would still put her in the car and take her to Sonic because it's a drive-in. You don't have to get out of the car and she can have her ice cream, which was the greatest thing in the world for her. So she can have ice cream. I had ice cream. We were happy, listened to music. It was wonderful. It was a nice little break, but we never got out of the car. So it's just a matter of being creative. And what I tell caregivers is that you should call me because I'm not stressed about your situation. I can think more clearly. You're in the heat of it. You're in the middle of the struggle, and it's very hard to think clearly when you're in the middle of that tornado. I know that. So call me and let me help you get out of it. Let me help you calm the waters around you because, as I said, there's a lot of creative things that you can do, but it's very hard to come up with those when you're so stressed.
I want to point out one other reason to schedule weekly support, which I don't know that I mean I've thought about it before, but I've never seen it in action that quite so specifically. One of the members of my dementia support group, her husband has dementia, and she like me, like late 70s, early 80s. She was working in her yard, and she had a friend over who does landscaping work, and the friend was doing some things in the yard, and my friend was down in the basement. There are 14 steps that go up before you reach where the bulkhead is. And
Hmm.
she's in the basement. She's carrying up a very lightweight aluminum, some kind of a container. As she's going up the stairs, she's thinking, why am I bothering carrying this bulky thing? I'll just toss it up because it's lightweight. So she goes back like this to toss the object up the stairs, and she lost her balance and she fell backwards. She hit her head. She broke her femur.
Oh.
Fortunately, the woman who does the other landscaping, she was there and heard my friend screaming, helped her get up the stairs. They called another friend who is a retired geriatric charge nurse and who lived not far. And the friend came right over, immediately went into, in charge mode, assessed everything, got her leg stabilized, got her to an orthopedic walk-in place right
Hmm.
away. And they set her leg in one of these bracing kind of contraptions. But
Hmm.
imagine now she's got like a 2-inch wide metal ruler running from her ankle up to the top of her thigh, at the back of her leg, and it's all wrapped and everything. She can't bend her leg, even moving, sitting. They had to get a wheelchair out that she had in the basement from a previous caregiving scenario. And she was saying that the whole time, even as she's falling, she was thinking about her husband. Who's going
Him.
to take
Yep.
care of him? Because she
Right.
knew she was falling. And you know that disaster is right there on your
Hmm.
doorstep. If she had been in that habit of having weekly support coming into the house, and fortunately in her case, she is because she has help cleaning the house because there's things that she can't handle by herself
Hmm.
anymore. So her husband is not like, what's going on with these strangers in the house? But for a lot of people, that is the case. And so if you
Hmm.
don't have arrangements to have somebody come over on a weekly basis, whether it's to help you with some kind of cleaning or doing grocery shopping for you, or just need somebody to come over and take the trash out, walk the dog, change the sheets, just something
Mhm.
so that the person with dementia gets a little more awareness that there's another person here and that it's
Yes,
safe. Then, God
it
forbid. I mean, they've
helps.
told her she's going to be in this contraption for about 8 weeks.
Mm.
That's a long time to have that stress of what about him? What's going to
Hmm.
happen to him? How's this going to affect him? So that
Hmm.
that whole idea of scheduling help, I think, is really important.
I do too, and it because it helps both of you, and you're a better caregiver when you've taken a little bit of time for yourself, because then you're a little more rested, a little more refreshed, you have a little more patience. So it's not selfish. Self-care is not selfish.
Mm-mm.
Self-care makes you a better caregiver.
Sure does. And it's one of the best things you can do for your loved one. Because just
Hmm.
like the situation my friend is in, if she'd had a serious head injury and had to be hospitalized, that just, it's a whole nother world of care that suddenly
Hmm.
somebody would have to manage. I know that you have written and published, I don't know, 11, maybe 12 books, but there's one in particular I want to talk about. It's volume 2 of an anthology that you put together called the Caregivers Advocate. I know there are 2 volumes. And a friend of mine, Paul Wynn, has a piece in the second volume, and he's the one who told me about you and about your work and, just opened up this whole world. I'm so glad we're able to have this conversation. In volume 2, I know there are contributions, whether they're stories or essays or how-to information, but there are 22 professionals who made
Hmm.
contributions to this book, and each one of those people has had the lived experience of being a caregiver. The reason I want to talk with you about that on this podcast is I know from some correspondence that I've received from some of the people who listen to My Spouse Has Dementia. And I'm thinking of a couple people in particular, one with a really phenomenal Substack. There are people who they have stories to tell and they have the ability to write and they
Hmm.
want to tell the story to share with other people. Well, the catharsis of getting it out, of telling the story, but I know that it will help other people. And sometimes the idea of a book, a whole memoir is daunting. But
Yes.
the idea of contributing to an anthology is not as onerous an idea, at least to begin with. So I want to ask you some questions about the anthology so that for
Okay.
my listeners who might be saying, I want to write about a particular part of my caregiving journey.
Hmm.
Paul Wynn, as I mentioned, now he's an award-winning health writer, and I know he writes for more than 70 different publications. His essay in your book was Caregiving in the Sandwich Generation. Talk to me
Correct.
about some of the other areas, some of the other subjects that are covered,
Okay. First, Paul is amazing.
isn't
He
he?
is a wonderful, yes, he's such a wonderful guy. I'm so happy to get to meet him. He regularly writes for AARP as well as a bunch of other magazines. And so very knowledgeable, very learned man. And he did share about the sandwich generation, where he was talking about his personal experience of caring for parents while raising children. So we also have, and I would say this too, the authors, I did not just pick people from the United States because dementia is a worldwide epidemic. I picked people from 4 different countries to come and share their stories. And it's been so powerful. It's so moving. It's incredible. I'm still blown away by it. So I'm so glad that's the book you chose to ask me about because that book also has won 2 international literary awards. It won the Global Literary Award and it won the International Impact Book of the Year 2025 in the category of aging. So both books are Amazon international bestsellers. And so, anyway, they're fantastic. But every review is 5-star review, and that only happens for one reason. We have a structure. We tell a little about our own personal journey, and then we tell about the topic that they're writing about. And I visit with every person individually to make sure, first off, that they're a good fit. And what I mean by a good fit is that they care about other people. I don't choose people who just want to sell products or promote their business. I choose people who want to help other caregivers. And so these people come and they share a piece of their journey. And I monitor topics to make sure that we're covering a lot of different topics. So in volume 2, we've got a spouse caring for a spouse. And she actually, that was Veronica Shears, and she actually had her husband pass away while we were writing the book. And same thing happened in volume 1. The Caregiver's Advocate, the original one, we had a wife caring for her husband, and in that case, he had aphasia and had had a massive stroke and things, and he passed away in the writing of that book as well. And both these ladies, I had told them, it's fine, don't worry about it. You don't have to be concerned about doing this anymore. I'll let you off the hook. And both of them said, no, I need to share because it will honor their legacy and I need to tell their story. So I'm just so blown away. Such impressive people. And we also have got family caregivers. We've got, oh gosh, gerontologists, elder law attorneys, death doula, memory care experts, people from all walks of life, consultants, advocates. And so some are parents caring for children, some are spouses caring for their loved one. In volume 1 is a lady who's a professional caregiver who's not related to any of the people that she caregives for. She goes and offers 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks of respite care. She goes and lives with the family. And then quite often the family goes on a month-long vacation and she stays with the loved one that has dementia, Alzheimer's, whatever the case may be. And people from a doctor in the UK, and she's sharing about how to travel when your loved one has dementia, how to make it safer and easier. We just cover all the things that not all because there's so many, but we cover many, many topics that caregivers need to know about. And we do talk about mindset as well, how to balance love and finances, how to find your joyful days, how to improve your own memory. Because when you're caring for someone with dementia, you tend to think that you're getting dementia. You misplace your cell phone and all of a sudden you go, oh my goodness, I have dementia. No, you don't. My friend from Israel just says it wonderfully here. Rena Yudkowsky is a memory care expert. And I called her one day because we were meeting on Zoom. And I said, I think I'm losing it. I mean, I was driving to a mall, and then I realized I was driving to the wrong mall. And she said, what did you do? And I said, well, I took the exit, turned around, went back, and headed towards the other mall. And she said, what were you doing while you were driving? And I said, well, I was talking to my sister on the phone. And she said, Debbie, you don't have a memory problem. You have a lack of paying attention problem. She's had to laugh. That's why I love her. She's just so honest. And she's like, no, you weren't paying attention. Okay, yeah, that's fair. You're right.
But you're right though. The stress of dealing with dementia when it's with someone you love and you
Mm-hmm.
know what the outcome is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's so easy to fall into that trap of, I don't know where I set my phone, or I had a cup of coffee here and I don't know where I set it down. And you
Mm-hmm.
immediately think the worst because you're
Yes,
living in that world of the worst.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Absolutely.
so in terms of these various topics, how did you get the submissions in the first place? And I say this because you've done volume 1, this is volume 2, and I'm wondering
Mm-hmm.
if there is ever going to be a volume 3, and if I've got listeners who want to write their story, how did they find out about it? How did you do it here, at least for the first 2 volumes?
Well, they won't be able to be in volume 3 because it comes out July 21st, 2026.
Oh, wonderful.
It is
Wonderful.
currently in the final editing phases, so they can't be in 3, but they can always reach out to me to be in 4.
Okay.
Because there's so many topics that caregivers need. I mean, we talk about the legal, we talk about the POA, the wills and trusts, the mindset, the planning, preparing. There's just so many topics, and everyone's story is a little bit different. And I love those stories, and it is so cathartic for people to be able to share. And I know it has really helped me to be able to just share and because I don't share from a position of, oh, I've learned it all. No, I haven't. No, not at all. And I was not a perfect caregiver. I made mistakes, but I openly share those mistakes because I want caregivers to understand you're not alone. We all make mistakes. We all blow it. We all do things we wish we hadn't have done. And that's okay. You're human, but you're just doing the best you can. And so we can help in that. And we've got, like I said, family caregivers as well too, that don't run a business or anything. We've got other people that do run a business supporting caregivers and want to help and want to support. The last chapter of both those books and this third one coming up is nothing but resources to support caregivers. So even if all you did was look at that, it would be a huge help. But we list podcasts and books and different things that support caregivers, and they're different. Every anthology is different because the stories are different, the topics are different. In the first one, we share about bathing techniques. We have a registered nurse who shares about ways to make bath time easier. It's fantastic. It's useful information, how to have a less stressful meal time. I mean, these are things you need to know. How to reduce the wandering is something that I share about, and how to avoid burnout. I shared that in the first book. There's just so much great information. We have neurologists who have written reviews for us, who they both neurologists that wrote reviews were both also caregivers for their parents. And both of them said that it's the best resource book they have ever seen for caregivers. And they both have copies of the book in their lobby so that their patients can see it while they're sitting there waiting. So to me, I'm just like, this is amazing. This is incredible. I never realized that it was going to be so big. And I'm so blessed and so thankful to be able to lead these projects. And I bought the website, The Caregiver's Advocate, and I'm in the process of creating it right now.
Wonderful. Two things.
Mhm.
First, congratulations on the awards.
Thank you.
Well
Thank you.
deserved. I'm very happy for you and for all of those who submitted and whose stories appear in all of the volumes. And the other thing is, I think we learn the most valuable lessons through stories. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the power of a story, and it's so much easier to learn something by
Mhm.
hearing the story of someone else's experience. So the method of learning is so important
Yes.
when in your anthologies. Couple questions though about the process. Are there requirements in terms of word count or subject matter? Or is the subject matter anything caregiving related? Is it wide open? And
It's wide open. It's wide open, but I talk with them about it and make sure of the topic and that it's going to be cohesive with the entire book because, first off, it needs to be something that I agree with. And that sounds weird when I say that. But I mean, there are things that are way woo woo, for lack of term. There are things that are really out there that are not science backed at all. And I avoid those because I want actual information that supports caregivers. The first part is a story of their journey. The second part are strategies. And it's strategies that caregivers can use that they can put into effect. So I don't want it to just be a good story that they're reading. I want the caregiver to be able to learn things that will help them on their journey as they're reading this. And so if anyone is interested, and yes, we do have word counts also, 2,500 to 3,000 words is the chapter length, and you get a very generous 300 word bio in that as well. Most bios are very short, ours are huge, and we also put all your contact information so that if someone wants to reach out to you and you're someone who offers support for caregivers, then they can reach out to you. They know all the ways to get in touch with you. That's another huge benefit of both these books, The Caregiver's Advocate 1 and 2, and it's the same for coming up for 3. You get over 20 in each book, 20, 21, 22 different people's contact information, the people who are in the field working to support caregivers or who can give you a different perspective because they might not resonate with me, but they might resonate with Paul or someone else.
sure.
They may They may like someone else. So you learn a little about them, see who they are. And then if you want to go and pick up their free gift or join their email list or go visit their website, we give you the tools to be able to do that.
That sounds really good. I also just want to point out to people, if they're not familiar with it, that on average, like you were saying, that you get a 300-word bio. On
Mhm.
average, one full page of type like 8.5 by 11 regular size paper, double spaced, is 250 words. So you're looking at a full page, double spaced, and a
Mhm.
little more on another page. That's a lot. That's very generous
Yes.
space to be
Yes.
given to a bio. That's really nice. Now, is there a cost to submit? Does that vary with, as time goes by with each anthology?
Yes.
Because I'm guessing that
Yeah.
production costs change wildly.
They do. They do. And yes, there is. And there's a discount given to returning authors. And I have quite a few authors who are returning authors and a few who've been in all three volumes of the book. So that's exciting. But if someone's interested in writing a chapter, they can just email me, deb@thepurplevine.com, and I would be more than happy to visit with them. I like to get on a Zoom chat with people and then meet each other, talk about what we're doing, see if it's a good fit, see if we like each other first, and then
Well, and
go from
thinking
there.
about whether or not something is a good fit, let me get to the one of the hard questions from the writer's perspective. How do you turn somebody down? Because I'm certain that there are submissions that don't fit for whatever reason. How do you say
Mhm.
no?
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. I have had to do it, but I try to do it with as much grace as possible and just explain. And first, let me say in this too, I don't do it the way I have a friend who does anthologies as well, and we don't do it the same way. She looks at the size of their email list, the size of their following, all that sort of thing before she decides, to let them make an application. I don't do that. I talk to the person first. I don't care what your email list size is. I don't care if you have a business or not. I care about your story and your ability to help other people. And so if you have a story and then you have action tools that are going to help other people, then you're going to fit right in. But if I had one lady in one volume who wanted to be in it, but all she wanted to do was basically an infomercial for her business. She wasn't offering any helpful information except buy my products. And so it wasn't very hard for me there. I just said, this is not a good fit. This is not what I want. What I'm looking for is help for the caregiver. My heart goes out to all the caregivers because I've been there, because I know how hard it is. And someone has to match my heart. You don't have to have the same passion as me, but you do have to care about caregivers or you're just not a good fit. That's it. You don't have to worry about writing skill. We train you on how to write. You don't have to come in with all of this, I'm already a great writer at this and that and the other. You don't have to be. We train you on that. We work with you on that. We have Zoom meetings and we talk about things, we discuss things. You get to meet the other people that you're collaborating with, which is fantastic because then you've got new relationships, you've got new connections, and it's a wonderful tool. It's a wonderful tool, and it blesses the people who participate as well as the people who read about it.
I was thinking about that. And I want to close with asking you specifically if there is such satisfaction in being able to create, period, whether or not anybody ever sees it or hears it or reads it. The satisfaction of creating is all in its own a gift.
Mhm.
When that creation goes into the world, and you, as the creator, know that it could really help someone, that you can feel the purpose behind your creation. I think that is a real gift to the caregiver. It's part of what says, I'm in a journey that is very stressful, or that very stressful journey is over, and I can now reflect on what I learned. But either way, it's
Mhm.
providing a guiding light for somebody else who is still in that awful fog. Debbie DeMoss Compton of thepurplevine.com. Thank you so very, very much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
You're very welcome. Well, that was my conversation with Debbie DeMoss Compton. I wanted you to hear from someone who understands the caregiving world and who offers a path to publication for those who want to contribute to a growing body of work by and for caregivers. Sharing our own stories, listening to the stories of others, asking questions, challenging assumptions. Those are all threads in the story we weave. I like that image. It reminds me that even a fragile-looking thread, like silk, is very strong. Keep that in mind when you hear me say, take good care of yourself. Those words aren't fluffy. They're fierce because we need to survive. Thanks for listening all the way to the end.